Hi, I'm Paul Guppy with the Washington Policy Center, and this is our weekly update on the legislative issues that we're following at the state capitol in Olympia. And we are most of the way through the shorter 60-day session that's scheduled for this year. It started in mid-January. It's going to end on March 10th is when it's scheduled to end. And so we have about 3 weeks of session left. And so far, this is what's going on with the major issues that we're tracking. Everyone in the state has now seen that Governor Inslee has finally, after almost 2 years, started to back off on some of the mandates that he's imposed. So King County and statewide has announced that the vaccine mandate will end for the public on March 1st. So that's coming up in a week or so. And then the governor announced that his indoor mask mandate will end on March 21st. So a lot of people are scratching their heads as to why is he delaying it for the better part of a month. But at least we are seeing that some of the COVID restrictions are being removed and the public health situation is better. Schools are opening up, and so we're returning to normal. We're going to continue to encourage that. From a policy point of view, we have done comparative studies that show that Washington State is virtually the last state in the country which is removing the emergency COVID mandates. We've also found that the public health outcomes in other states, which have been open for a long time, schools have been open, really are no different than they are here. So there doesn't seem to be much impact or benefit from economic lockdowns, mandates, the policies that we've been living under for the last couple of years, because the public health results do not show a major difference between states that had fewer mandates and lockdown and Washington State. But again, we're an interesting test case because Washington will be nearly the last state to remove all of its restrictions coming up later in March. Another issue that we're looking at is, well, I should also mention that speaking of emergency powers, February 28th, coming up in a few days, is the 2-year anniversary of Governor Inslee imposing his emergency powers. He announced taking the mandates away, but he also specifically said that he is not giving up any emergency power. So he's going to continue that. We have been pushing for a return to normal democracy. Again, most other state governors many months ago ended their formal emergencies and are managing COVID as a normal public health problem. Governor Inslee has not taken that course yet, so we'll continue to follow that. On that note, there is a emergency powers bill, SB 5909, to reform the process that was considered in the Senate, or rather in the House, in the Senate, passed in the Senate. The problem is that that bill basically does nothing. It makes no change in our emergency powers in our state. What the bill provides is that after 90 days, if all 4 legislative leaders in the House and the Senate agree, they can end a state of emergency for this governor or a future governor. That is effectively impossible to achieve. To get 4 leaders in the legislature to agree to take a step will probably never happen. And in fact, Brandy Cruz, the journalist, has a great 5-minute video on our website explaining what this bill does, and she interviews the sponsor of the bill. The sponsor of the bill said that passing this bill is, quote, part of the beauty of our democracy. But our problem with that is that it's actually not bringing us back to normal democracy. So we hope that emergency powers reform can be revisited by the legislature at some point in the future. And that whether it's Governor Inslee or some future governor, we think emergency should be limited to 30 or 90 days, or 30 or 60 days, which is typical in other states, unless the legislature extends it beyond that. Another piece of good news for us is a bill that we opposed very strongly, SB 5843. That bill was proposed with great fanfare by the governor to impose limitations on free speech in our state about who could talk about the election process or the outcome of elections. So this clearly have First Amendment problems right away, violating constitutional rights to be able to talk about public topics, but also it undermines the norms of our democracy. We did an analysis on the bill. I testified in a hearing about it, and we just got news a few days ago that leadership in the Senate, which is the governor's own party, have pointed out that they are not going to move this bill. So that's a win for us already. This on the other issues that we're working on, so we're glad to see that. Next issue I wanted to cover is SB 5974. This is a grand transportation funding package. It includes $16 billion in new taxes and fees, but one particular new tax is causing a lot of concern, and that is a 6 cent a gallon tax on refined fuels that are exported out of the state. And this is from the refineries at Anacortes. And immediately there was a reaction from the governors and state legislators in Idaho, Alaska, and Oregon, because they immediately pointed out, you're imposing a tax on the citizens of those states for a product that is created in Washington state. We also thought this was unusual because apparently the drafters of this bill are unaware of the US Constitution and the Interstate Commerce Clause. So from the very beginning of our country, we have had an open, internal, national market. The idea that one state would impose a tax on products going to another state has never been constitutional and creates a very practical problem. So we'll see what happens with that provision. The transportation bill itself will almost certainly be passed by this legislature, but they may adjust some of these taxes inside the bill. Another issue we're following, again, controversial, is kind of quietly unnoticed by most people. The State Board of Health has been holding public hearings, or meetings rather, on whether to impose a vaccine mandate on COVID on all school children. So right now we have standard vaccinations that all kids get. They've been in place for many decades. They're generally non-controversial. There are reasonable exceptions that some families can ask for. The question is, should COVID vaccines be added to that list? So Elizabeth Hovey, our healthcare expert, has been following that very closely, reporting on it on our blog if you want to get an update there. Another hearing is coming up. Well, she attended a hearing last Thursday, and we're going to attend the next hearing as well to see what happens. The question we have about this is that the COVID vaccine mandate, or vaccine, at least so far, is not an actual vaccine. So it doesn't stop the spread of the disease. It has some health benefits, which is good, but it is not like proven vaccines that children take routinely. It's different. And so that's what's creating some debate about that. Last item is we continue to report on opening up the public schools, which we believe is a good idea. But in the meantime, Lee Finna on our staff has been staying in close touch with the superintendent of public instruction for the state. They know her very well. She follows their data closely. And again, quietly, OSPI put out the latest test results from students across the state, and they do not look good. So Lee is reporting on those. She's doing an analysis of that. And the latest test scores show that 70% of students in public schools are failing the math standard, and that 52% of students are not meeting the English standard. We are very concerned about falling academic standards in public schools with critical race theory and culture war type battles that end up being in the schools. Parents feel that they don't have a voice, and we're proposing reforms that would bring parents into the process and provide financial resources and alternatives for families that want to get an education someplace else. So that's a quick update on the issues that we're following. As always, we appreciate the support of all of our supporters. It makes our work possible. We encourage you to share this video with your friends if you think they would enjoy it. We have a Young Professionals event coming up in Bellevue next week. That will be a lot of fun. And also we have our events for our top supporters, our Pillar Society members in Palm Springs. That's on March 12th. And then we're doing an event also with a speaker in Scottsdale, Arizona on March 26th. And these are wintertime events where we like to get to someplace where the weather's better. They're a lot of fun. And again, for our top supporters, if you want more information about that, you can check our website. And that's our update. Thank you very much.